Night has a way of arriving without announcement. It simply settles slowly, kindly like a blanket drawn over the edges of a long day. If you're listening now, perhaps the room around you is already dim. The sharp lines of furniture soften. The air feels a little heavier, a little warmer. Even the silence has a texture to it, gentle, breathable, unhurried. You don't need to do anything special tonight. There's nothing to remember, nothing to solve, nothing to follow perfectly. This story will move at the pace of a calm heartbeat. And if at any moment your thoughts drift elsewhere, that's not a mistake. That's part of the journey. Before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, remember to subscribe to Tedious History for Sleep. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. Now, let your shoulders drop just a little. Allow your jaw to unclench. And if it feels comfortable, take a slow breath in through your nose and let it leave you without effort. Tonight, we will wander through history, not through battles or dates, not through the loud moments that demand attention, but through the softer spaces history often forgets to mention. We will visit the places where time learned to whisper. Imagine for a moment a single lantern, not a bright one, not a harsh flame, just a small, steady light, warm gold, steady, reliable, swaying slightly in the night air. This lantern doesn't hurry. It doesn't flicker with urgency. It simply glows patiently. And wherever it passes, the world becomes quieter. We begin in a place that feels enclosed and safe, a stone chamber deep within a medieval city. The walls are thick-built not only to keep danger out, but to hold warmth in. The stone remembers heat. It releases it slowly, long after the fires have dimmed. The air smells faintly of dried herbs, lavender, rosemary, perhaps a hint of something resinous and sweet. Somewhere nearby, oil lamps hum softly, their flames steady and well-fed. This is not a room of urgency, it is a room of pause. Here, history rests. Inside this chamber sits a woman history knows is powerful, but tonight, power is not the story. Tonight, she is simply tired. Isabella of Castile, though names are unimportant here, rests in a wooden chair carved smooth by years of use. Her crown is absent, her posture has softened. The weight of decisions, of voices, of expectations has been set aside for a few quiet moments. She holds a small cup between her hands. Steam rises slowly, curling and dissolving before it can form a thought. She does not rush to drink. She inhales first. Because even centuries ago, people understood something simple and true, that comfort begins with breath. Outside these walls, the world continues busy, demanding, unresolved. But inside this chamber, time behaves differently. Here, moments stretch. Seconds feel generous. As Isabella lifts the cup, her shoulders lower almost imperceptibly. A sip. Warmth spreads, not dramatically, not suddenly, but gradually, like dawn easing into the edges of night. She sits, she breathes, she waits. And in that waiting, history reveals something tender. Across centuries, across continents, across cultures, the most powerful people in the world all discovered the same quiet truth. Even power needs rest. The lantern moves again. Now we find ourselves far from Castile, drifting eastward, carried not by urgency but by curiosity. The kind of curiosity that doesn't demand answers, only presence. We enter another chamber. This one feels different. The ceiling is higher. The light softer, filtered through silk curtains that breathe with the night air. Incense smolders nearby, releasing a scent that feels almost blue-cool, calming, ancient. Here sits Theodora, Empress of Byzantium, not addressing crowds, not shaping laws, just existing. Her hands rest loosely in her lap. Jewels remain, yes, but tonight they are quiet, reflecting lamplight instead of attention. She closes her eyes. In this stillness, her thoughts do not argue. They drift. They settle. Perhaps you've known moments like this too. Moments when the world doesn't disappear, but steps back, respectfully. If you have ever sat alone in the evening, listening to nothing in particular, then you already understand this part of history. The lantern glows brighter, not louder, not sharper, just clearer. And something gentle begins to emerge. A realization, moving slowly enough that it doesn't wake the mind. History is not only made in moments of action. It is also shaped in moments of stillness. Decisions soften when minds rest. Perspectives widen when bodies relax. Even empires needed rooms like these. The lantern drifts again. Now we stand beneath a sky open, wide, endless. Stars scatter themselves across the darkness without pattern or urgency. This is Olympia, but not the Olympia of roaring crowds or triumphant victories. This is Olympia at night. The games have ended for the day. Torches burn low. The ground still holds warmth from the sun. Athletes sleep. Spectators whisper. The world exhales. In this place long ago, people agreed quietly, collectively, to pause conflict. Not forever. Just long enough to breathe together. The truce was not loud, it was gentle. A shared understanding that rest, too, had value. As moonlight washes over stone and earth, wreaths of olive leaves rest nearby, not symbols of conquest, but of presence. Victory here is simple. To arrive, to participate, to return home whole. And in this quiet realization, something soft clicks into place. Maybe history's most enduring legacy isn't dominance or expansion. Maybe it's the moments when humanity remembered how to be gentle. The lantern slows. Its glow becomes softer. And now, very slowly, it turns toward you. You don't need to follow it with your eyes. You don't need to hold on to any image. Just let the feeling remain. A sense that even across centuries, even across unfamiliar names and places, the rhythm is the same. People worked, people worried, people rested, and rest was always allowed. As this part of the story begins to fade, notice your breath again. Slower now, deeper. You are safe here, unrushed, unobserved. In the next part, we will continue drifting through more quiet rooms, through soft discoveries hidden in the margins of history. But for now, there is nothing to do. Just rest where you are. Tonight, the lantern moves again, not with haste but with a patient certainty, gliding through corridors of time where footsteps have long since faded, and as it goes, the world continues to soften around you. The edges of thought growing rounder, less defined, like stones smoothed by water over many years. We arrive in another room, another quiet refuge that history rarely pauses to describe, because nothing dramatic happens here, and yet everything important does. The room belongs to Frederick, an emperor known in records for sharp intellect and restless ambition, but those traits remain outside the door tonight, set down gently like a heavy cloak. Inside, the air feels different, faintly cool, touched by night mist drifting through an open window. Candlelight trembles just enough to remind the eye that it is alive. The ceiling arches above, painted long ago with patterns meant to suggest heaven, and as Frederick reclines, his breathing slow and unguarded, something curious begins to happen. The ceiling seems to move. Not truly, not in any way that needs explaining, but in the soft way things do when the mind loosens its grip on certainty. The patterns rise and fall, as if the room itself were breathing along with him. In this moment, power dissolves into sensation. The emperor is not ruling. He is resting. And perhaps you know this feeling too, the way familiar walls can seem to expand and contract when you are on the edge of sleep, the way the mind begins to paint gentler meanings onto ordinary shapes. Frederick does not question it. He lets it happen. History often forgets to tell us this, but even the most commanding figures learned, at night, to surrender. The lantern drifts onward, carrying this softness with it, and now we find ourselves somewhere warmer, where the night air carries the scent of water and flowering plants. A bathhouse, long after voices have left, steam still clinging to stone like a memory unwilling to fade. Here, centuries ago, people came not only to clean their bodies, but to slow their thoughts. Pools reflect lamplight in lazy ripples, and each ripple seems to carry away a worry, a plan, a name. Someone steps into the water, slowly, carefully, respecting the transition from air to warmth. The muscles yield, the breath deepens, and history, once again, becomes intimate. There are no speeches echoing here, no proclamations carved into stone. Only the shared human understanding that warmth heals, that stillness restores. As the lantern lingers, a realization begins to settle, gentle as dust. Across cultures and eras, people built spaces like this not for luxury, but for survival. Rest was not indulgence, it was maintenance. Without it, nothing endured. If your thoughts are beginning to wander now, drifting toward your own memories of warmth, of quiet evenings or slow mornings, that is perfectly fine. You are following the same path. The lantern moves again, and the world opens outward, leaving enclosed chambers behind. We stand now beneath a vast sky, the kind that humbles without frightening, the kind that invites the eyes to relax because there is nothing they must focus on. Stars scatter themselves freely, unconcerned with pattern or purpose. In ancient times, people lay beneath this same sky, not to calculate, not to predict, but simply to feel small in a comforting way. To know that worries had edges, but the universe did not. Somewhere nearby, a small fire crackles, steady and predictable. Its rhythm does not demand attention. It offers companionship. Someone stirs embers, then stills, content to watch the glow settle back into quiet. This too is history. Not the history of conquest, but the history of presence. Of people who paused long enough to notice the way night sounds deepen when the world sleeps. Crickets marking time. Wind brushing leaves together. The low murmur of distant water. The lantern's light softens further now, and it reveals a truth that feels less like information and more like reassurance. The past was not always loud. Much of it was spent exactly like this, in pauses between obligations, in moments where nothing needed to happen for life to feel complete. And as this understanding spreads, it gently invites your body to follow. Perhaps your breathing has slowed without instruction. Perhaps your jaw feels heavier, your eyelids warmer. That is not something you are doing. It is something you are allowing. The lantern begins its slow return, not backward, but inward, carrying with it the warmth of rooms, the hush of bathhouses, the steady breathing beneath painted ceilings. These are not stories meant to be remembered in detail. They are impressions, like the feeling of a place you once loved but no longer need to name. And as this part of the journey draws to a close, there is no cliff, no tension, only an open doorway leading deeper into rest. In the next part, we will follow the lantern further, into the gentle discoveries hidden in rituals and shared silences. But for now, there is nothing required of you. Simply remain where you are, supported by the quiet knowledge that even history knew when to rest. Just as we left those quiet chambers behind, the lantern continues its unhurried path, carrying with it the warmth of stone walls, the echo of slow breathing, and the understanding that nothing needs to be held too tightly tonight. Its light does not cut through the darkness. It blends with it, becoming part of the night itself. And as it drifts, the world feels less like a series of places and more like a continuous exhale. We arrive somewhere that feels both familiar and distant, a space shaped not by walls but by ritual. A small table stands near an open window, the wood worn smooth by countless hands over centuries. Upon it rests a simple bowl, steam rising lazily, scented with herbs whose names have softened with time. This is not a moment of discovery meant to impress. It is a moment meant to soothe. Long ago, people understood that certain plants carried stories of their own, stories that did not need to be explained to work. Mandrake, chamomile, lotus, lavender, names whispered rather than announced. Prepared slowly, taken without urgency. Someone lifts the bowl, pauses, breathes in the aroma, and in that pause, the mind begins to loosen its grip on the day. History often records what was built, conquered, or declared, but it rarely lingers on these quieter acts of care. Yet these rituals happened every night, in homes grand and humble alike. They were threads of continuity, tying one generation to the next through the shared language of comfort. The lantern glows a little warmer now, and with it comes a soft realization. Much of history survived not because people pushed harder, but because they knew when to soften. As this understanding settles, the scene shifts gently, like a tide changing direction without announcing itself. We are no longer focused on one person or one room, but on a pattern repeating across time. A scholar setting aside his scrolls as the oil lamp dims. A healer rinsing her hands, letting warm water carry away the weight of listening all day. A traveler unrolling a mat beneath unfamiliar stars, finding rest in the simple fact of having arrived somewhere safe. These are not dramatic moments. They do not demand attention, and that is precisely why they are powerful. They teach the nervous system something ancient and reassuring. Rest is allowed. If you notice your own thoughts becoming less distinct now, like shapes seen through fog, that is not something to resist. It is a sign that the mind is beginning to trust the night. The lantern drifts onward, and with it comes a soft discovery, one that does not shock or surprise, but instead feels like remembering something you always knew. Even the grandest civilizations were held together by small, repeating comforts. By warm drinks at night, by shared silences. By the agreement, unspoken yet universal, that when darkness came, the world could slow down. In one corner of history, a ruler sips a familiar infusion, not thinking of policy but of warmth. In another, a farmer listens to the steady breathing of animals settling for the night. In another still, a child falls asleep to a story told so often that its words blur into reassurance. None of these moments needed to be recorded to matter. They mattered because they happened. The lantern's light dims slightly now, not because it is fading, but because your eyes no longer need it to be bright. The images it reveals are softer, less defined. A curtain moving gently in night air. The quiet clink of ceramic placed carefully on wood. The distant sound of water flowing somewhere beyond sight. These details do not ask to be remembered. They ask only to be felt. And as the feeling deepens, a quiet reflection emerges, simple and kind. Comfort, it seems, is the softest kind of chain. Not one that binds, but one that anchors. It keeps us from drifting too far into worry, too far into effort. It reminds us that we belong to a rhythm older than obligation. This reflection does not need agreement. It does not need analysis. It can simply pass through like a thought you notice just before sleep, then let go. The lantern pauses, hovering as if listening. And in that pause, it invites you to notice your own body again, without changing anything. The weight of your head supported, the gentle rise and fall of your chest, the way stillness feels when you are no longer waiting for something to happen. This is the same stillness people found centuries ago when they set down their tools, their titles, their worries, and allowed night to do what it has always done best. As this part of the journey draws to a close, there is no conclusion to reach, no lesson to carry forward actively. There is only a sense of continuity, a gentle thread running from past to present, from their quiet rituals to yours. In the next part, we will follow the lantern into a wider space, where shared pauses became shared values and where peace was practiced not loudly but together. Until then, remain where you are, held by the understanding that rest has always been part of the human story, and it is part of yours tonight as well. The lantern resumes its gentle motion, carrying forward everything it has gathered so far, the warmth of rooms, the memory of slow rituals, the reassurance that rest has always existed alongside effort. And as it moves, the night seems to widen rather than deepen, opening into a space where quiet is not solitary but shared. We arrive again at Olympia, though not as a destination marked on a map, but as a feeling that settles softly in the chest. The ground here is cool beneath bare feet, smoothed by countless passages over time, and the air holds a subtle echo, as if it remembers voices long after they have chosen silence. The games are finished, the crowds dispersed, and what remains is something far gentler than celebration. Torches burn low, their flame steady and obedient. casting long shadows that stretch without urgency. Somewhere nearby, a small group sits together, not speaking, simply present, aware of one another in the way people are when nothing needs to be proven. In ancient times, this quiet agreement was known as a truce, but here it feels less like a rule and more like a shared breath. For a little while, conflict was set aside, not resolved, not erased, but paused. And in that pause, something human had room to unfold. The lantern drifts closer, illuminating simple details that history often overlooks. A hand resting on the ground, fingers splayed to feel the earth's remaining warmth. A slow stretch after long hours of movement. The gentle clink of a cup being set down, empty now, its purpose fulfilled. These are the moments that stitched people together, not through triumph, but through mutual stillness. The concept of arete, often translated as excellence, takes on a different shape here. It is not about winning. It is about showing up fully, then knowing when to rest. Doing one's best, and then allowing the night to take over. This understanding does not announce itself loudly. It settles in gradually, like a realization that arrives just as sleep begins to approach. Perhaps you have felt something similar in your own life, a moment when striving softened into acceptance, when effort gave way to presence. The lantern seems to sense this recognition and slows further, as if honoring it. The scene begins to blur at the edges, not because it is fading, but because the mind no longer needs sharp outlines. Faces become impressions. Voices become warmth. Time becomes circular, looping gently rather than moving forward. In this softened space, the past feels less distant. People from centuries ago are no longer figures in stories, but companions in rest, sitting quietly under the same kind of sky you might see if you looked up tonight. Stars wheel overhead, indifferent to eras, offering the same calm perspective to everyone beneath them. The lantern tilts upward briefly, acknowledging that vastness, then returns its focus to the ground, to the human scale where comfort lives. It reveals a simple truth, one that feels steady rather than surprising. Peace, when it appears, is usually quiet. It does not arrive with announcements or demands. It is practiced gently, in shared pauses, in mutual respect for the need to slow down. This truth does not need to be carried forward as a lesson. It can simply be felt, then released. As the lantern begins to drift away from Olympia, it does not feel like leaving. It feels like carrying something forward, a softness that can exist anywhere. The images dissolve gradually, replaced by a sense of spaciousness, as if the mind itself has room to breathe. If your thoughts are becoming fewer now, more distant, like lights seen through mist, that is perfectly natural. You are moving with the same rhythm this story has followed all along. The lantern's glow dims once more, and with it comes a gentle invitation, not spoken aloud but understood. There is no need to stay alert. No need to hold on to any particular image. History has offered its quiet companionship, and now it steps back, trusting you to rest. As this part of the journey settles, notice how stillness feels when it is shared across time, when it belongs not just to you, but to countless others who pause like this before sleep. In the next part, the lantern will guide us even further inward, toward reflections that dissolve into comfort rather than thought. Until then, remain exactly as you are, supported by the calm certainty that even in the vast flow of history, moments like this were always enough. The lantern does not rush away from Olympia. It simply continues as if carried by the same breath that rises and falls in your chest and the quiet it leaves behind. Does not feel empty but complete, like a sentence that does not need another word added to it. As it drifts onward, the world around it grows softer still, less concerned with place, and more attuned to sensation, to the slow unfolding of awareness that happens when the mind no longer tries to hold everything together. We pass through landscapes that are not sharply defined, but gently suggested a shoreline, where waves arrive without urgency and leave without regret. A narrow path through tall grass that bends and straightens with the passing breeze, a simple dwelling with a single window glowing faintly in the night, offering reassurance rather than invitation. These are not scenes meant to be explored, only noticed. the way one notices the weight of a blanket or the steady presence of the ground beneath the body. In this part of the journey, history becomes less about events and more about continuity, the long, unbroken habit of humans finding ways to settle themselves when darkness falls. Long before written records, people learned the language of night through repetition, through fire tended carefully, through songs hummed low enough not to disturb sleep, through stories told not to excite but to soothe. The lantern carries these echoes forward, and as it does, they begin to feel strangely familiar, as though they are not being introduced, but remembered. Somewhere long ago, someone sat by a fire much like the one you might imagine now, watching embers pulse gently, red to orange to ash, and in that watching, the day loosened its hold. The same thing happens now in a quieter way, within you. Thoughts that once seemed important drift to the edges, becoming less insistent, less sharply outlined. The lantern seems to respond to this softening, its glow spreading wider but dimmer, illuminating not objects but atmosphere, a sense of spaciousness where nothing needs to be named. We move through centuries without marking them, through cultures without distinguishing them because the experience remains the same. A person lying back against cool stone after a long day, feeling the steadiness beneath them. Another listening to rain tap gently against wood, counting nothing, waiting for nothing. Another feeling sleep approach like a tide that does not need to be chased or resisted. History in this telling is not a line but a rhythm, repeating, dependable kind. The lantern pauses beside a quiet dwelling, somewhere between forest and field, where a door stands slightly ajar to let the night air circulate. Inside, a simple room waits, containing little more than a low bed, a folded cloth, and the soft scent of dried plants hanging from a beam. No one speaks here. There is no need. The room understands its purpose. It exists to hold rest. As the lantern's light drifts across the space, shadows move slowly, stretching and shrinking without drama, and the feeling is not one of watching, but of belonging. If you imagine yourself here, you do not feel like a visitor. You feel like someone who has always known how to arrive. This sense of arrival deepens as the lantern resumes its path, now less a guide than a companion, content to move alongside rather than ahead. The world outside the room grows quieter still, as if sound itself is learning to rest. Even the night seems to slow, stars appearing to hold their positions just a little longer, as though aware that nothing needs to progress. In this slowed state, reflections arise naturally, without effort, gentle thoughts about time and its softness, about how many nights have passed like this, unnoticed, unrecorded, yet essential. The realization comes without weight. Life has always contained these pauses, these long exhales between moments of effort, and it is often here in these pauses that healing quietly happens. The lantern's glow now feels less like light and more like warmth, something you sense rather than see, and it invites you to notice the same warmth within your own body, the subtle comfort of stillness, the reassurance of being supported. There is no instruction to breathe deeply or relax further. Those things are already unfolding on their own. The lantern simply bears witness as you follow the same pattern people have followed for as long as nights have existed. As the journey continues, scenes blend together gently. A field becomes a shoreline. A dwelling becomes a tent beneath open sky. A fire becomes a candle, then simply a memory of warmth. This blending is not confusing. It is soothing, like the way thoughts merge just before sleep, losing their edges, becoming impressions rather than narratives. The lantern does not resist this merging. It allows itself to fade slightly, trusting that its presence is no longer necessary in the same way. And in this trust, something within the listener is invited to trust as well, to let go of the need to follow, to understand, to stay awake for what comes next. History, having offered its quiet companionship, now steps back with respect, leaving space for rest to take over. The long exhale of time continues, carrying you gently, steadily, toward deeper stillness. There is no ending here, no moment where something stops. There is only a gradual settling, like dust after a long journey, like water after a stone has passed through it. And as this part of the story comes to rest, the lantern remains nearby, its light barely perceptible now, Not because it is gone, but because you no longer need it to see. Everything you need is already present in the quiet, in the softness, in the simple permission to sleep. The lantern, now scarcely brighter than a thought, continues alongside you, not leading, not following, simply present, and the quiet it carries feels settled rather than empty, like a room after a long conversation has ended kindly. The world no longer shifts in clear scenes. Instead, it breathes in textures and sensations, the kind that do not ask to be named. A distant shoreline murmurs without insisting on rhythm, waves arriving and leaving as they have always done, teaching patience without instruction. The air holds a mild coolness that rests comfortably on the skin, neither waking nor chilling, just enough to remind the body that it is held by the night. Somewhere unseen, a tree moves slightly, leaves brushing one another in a language older than words, a sound that reassures simply by repeating itself. History, at this depth, becomes almost indistinguishable from the present moment. The people who once listened to these same sounds are no longer separate figures. They are part of the same continuity, the same long pause stretching gently across centuries. You might sense them not as individuals, but as presence, as the collective understanding that night is a time for easing, not striving. The lantern drifts through this shared quiet and pauses near a simple structure, one that feels familiar no matter when it existed, walls close enough to feel safe, a roof that keeps the sky from feeling too vast. Inside, there is very little, because very little is needed, a place to lie down, a surface that supports without comment, a faint scent of wood and earth that grounds the senses without drawing attention. This is the kind of space people return to night after night, trusting it to receive them exactly as they were. As the lantern's warmth spreads through the room, it reveals nothing new, only the comfort of recognition. The body understands this kind of space instinctively. Muscles soften not because they are told to, but because there is no longer a reason to stay alert. The mind, too, begins to adopt this simplicity, letting go of distinctions that felt important earlier, allowing thoughts to pass through like distant lights glimpsed from a moving train. There is no need to follow them. They move on their own. In this quiet, reflections arise gently, not as questions, but as acknowledgments. That life, across time, has always balanced effort with rest. That even in eras marked by hardship, people found ways to create moments like this, moments where the world was allowed to be enough as it was. The lantern seems to absorb these reflections, its glow dimming further, not from fading, but from having done its work. Outside the structure, night deepens, but it does not grow heavier. It becomes softer, more enveloping, like a familiar coat worn many times before. Stars are present, though they no longer ask to be counted. They simply exist, steady and patient, offering perspective without demand. Somewhere water moves slowly, its sound smoothing the edges of awareness, encouraging the same unhurried flow within you. The lantern resumes its motion briefly, then slows again, as if sensing that movement itself is becoming unnecessary. History, in this moment, offers one last gentle understanding, not spoken, but felt. That what endures most is not what was built or claimed, but what was repeated quietly, night after night, breath after breath. The simple acts of settling down, of trusting the dark, of allowing sleep to arrive without negotiation. This understanding does not need to be held consciously. It can sink beneath the surface, becoming part of the background hum of safety that supports rest. The lantern's presence is now almost indistinguishable from the warmth of the room, from the steadiness of the ground beneath you. It does not announce its departure, because it does not truly leave. It simply becomes unnecessary, like a light turned off once the eyes have adjusted to the dark. The quiet that remains is complete on its own. If there is any sense of drifting now, any feeling of edges dissolving, that is exactly as it should be. You are following the same gentle arc that countless others have followed before, moving from awareness into rest without crossing any sharp boundary. There is no moment where you must decide to sleep. Sleep arrives when it is ready, and until then, stillness is enough. The room, the night, the history woven softly around you, all remain patient. They do not expect anything from you. They do not need acknowledgement, they simply hold. As this part of the journey settles fully, the story no longer needs to guide or describe. The quiet does that on its own. The lantern, now fully absorbed into the atmosphere, leaves you with nothing to follow and nowhere to go. Only the steady reassurance that rest has always been here, waiting kindly, and that tonight, like so many nights before, it is enough to let it take over. The lantern, now scarcely brighter than a remembered feeling, continues beside you without direction or destination, and the quiet it carries has settled into something deep and dependable, like the calm that follows a long, gentle sigh. Nothing urges it forward, nothing pulls it back. It simply exists within the night, and the night seems content to hold it there. The world around you no longer arranges itself into clear scenes or distinct places. Instead, it becomes a soft field of sensations, the kind that do not require attention to be felt. A shoreline murmurs somewhere far away, waves arriving and retreating with no concern for time, their rhythm steady enough that the mind stops counting. The air carries a coolness that rests lightly on the skin, not sharp enough to wake you, not warm enough to distract, just present, just enough. Leaves brush against one another in the distance, their sound neither loud nor quiet, simply consistent, like a reminder that movement can exist without urgency. At this depth of stillness, history dissolves gently into the present moment. The people who once listened to these same sounds no longer feel separate from you. They are not characters or names, but traces of the same human need to pause, to soften, to be held by night. Across centuries, across cultures, the pattern repeats without effort. Day gives way to evening. Effort gives way to rest. Thought gives way to quiet. The lantern drifts toward a simple structure, one that feels familiar regardless of when it stood. Its walls are close enough to feel protective, its roof low enough to feel secure. Inside, there is very little, because very little has ever been required for rest, a place to lie down. A surface that supports weight without question. The faint scent of wood, earth, and something dry and herbal lingering in the air. This is a room that understands its purpose completely. It does not impress. It does not display. It simply receives. As the lantern's warmth spreads through the space, it does not reveal objects so much as it reveals permission. Permission for muscles to loosen, for breath to deepen naturally, for the mind to stop scanning for what comes next. The body recognizes this kind of space immediately. Shoulders sink. The jaw relaxes. The small muscles that hold the day together begin, one by one, to let go. Thoughts still arise, but they no longer insist on being followed. They drift past like distant lights seen through fog, present for a moment then gone, leaving no trace that needs explanation. In this quiet, reflections surface gently, not as questions or conclusions, but as simple acknowledgments. That life has always required these pauses. That even in times marked by uncertainty or effort, people found ways to create moments like this, moments where nothing needed to be solved. Night after night, they returned to familiar spaces, trusted familiar rhythms, and allowed sleep to arrive when it was ready. The lantern seems to absorb this understanding, its glow softening further, not dimming from weakness, but from completion. Outside the structure, night deepens without becoming heavy. Darkness here is not something to push against. It is something that wraps gently, like a well-worn blanket. Stars remain overhead, though they no longer ask to be noticed. They exist quietly, offering scale without demanding attention. Somewhere nearby, water moves slowly, perhaps a stream or a distant tide, its sound smoothing the edges of awareness, encouraging the same unhurried flow within you. The lantern resumes its motion for a moment, then slows again, as if recognizing that movement itself is no longer necessary. History offers one last gentle presence here, not as a lesson, but as reassurance. That what endured most across time was not noise or urgency, but repetition. The steady return to rest. The simple act of lying down. The trust that the dark would hold without harm. This reassurance does not need to be held in thought. It settles naturally, like warmth spreading through the body, like breath finding its own rhythm. The lantern's presence now blends completely with the room, with the night, with the quiet inside you. It does not announce its departure, because it does not truly leave. It becomes unnecessary, like a light turned off once the eyes have adjusted to darkness. The quiet that remains is full, not empty. If there is a sense of drifting now, of edges dissolving, of awareness spreading thin and wide at the same time, that is the natural continuation of this journey. There is no moment when you must choose sleep. Sleep arrives gently, on its own schedule, and until it does, stillness is enough. The room remains. The night remains. The long, patient rhythm of human rest continues, uninterrupted. Nothing is expected of you. Nothing is required. You are held, quietly and completely, by the same calm that has carried people through countless nights before this one. The lantern has nearly vanished now, not extinguished but absorbed so completely into the quiet that it no longer feels separate from the night itself, and what remains is a calm so steady it seems to have always been there waiting, patiently beneath every busy moment of the day. The world at this stage no longer presents itself in images that ask to be seen clearly. Instead, it becomes a field of sensation, subtle and continuous, like the awareness of your own breathing when you are no longer thinking about it. Time loosens its shape here. Minutes do not line up behind one another. They drift, overlap, soften, becoming something closer to a feeling than a measurement. This is the part of the night where history stops narrating and simply rests beside you, content to share the same stillness. Somewhere far back along the path we have traveled, there were rooms and rituals, stone walls and warm drinks, shared pauses beneath ancient skies. Now, those details have dissolved into a single understanding, simple and kind, that the human story has always included this moment, the moment when nothing more is asked of you. The quiet around you does not feel empty. It feels settled, like a lake after the last ripple has faded, its surface smooth not because nothing has touched it, but because everything has finally come to rest. Sounds still exist, but they are distant and gentle, no longer asking for interpretation. Perhaps a faint hum of air moving through space, or the low, almost imagined murmur of something far away. These sounds do not interrupt the silence. They belong to it. The body responds in its own way, gradually, without instruction. Muscles release their final unconscious efforts to hold posture. The space behind the eyes feels warmer, heavier. Thoughts arrive less frequently now, and when they do, they carry no urgency. They are like clouds seen from a great distance, drifting slowly enough that you do not feel the need to watch where they are going. In this state, reflection becomes unnecessary, but a gentle awareness remains, like a soft light behind closed eyelids. It carries a reassurance that feels deeply familiar, even if it cannot be traced to a single memory. It is the reassurance of countless nights that ended this way. Nights when people lay down and allowed the dark to do its quiet work. Long before electric light, before clocks measured hours so precisely, night taught humans how to surrender. It taught them that rest did not need to be earned through exhaustion alone, but was part of a natural cycle, as reliable as the setting of the sun. This teaching did not come through words or rules. It came through repetition, through the simple act of stopping. The lantern, if it can still be said to exist, rests somewhere within this understanding, no longer guiding, no longer illuminating, simply present as a memory of warmth. History itself feels like it has exhaled fully now, releasing the need to be observed. The past does not lean forward to instruct. The future does not press in with expectation. There is only this wide, gentle now, stretching comfortably in every direction. If there is a sense of floating, of being supported without effort, that is the night doing what it has always done best, holding without gripping, allowing without pushing. You may notice that the boundary between listening and resting has grown thin. Words no longer arrive as something to follow, but as a texture passing through awareness, like the feeling of fabric against skin or the distant warmth of a fire that no longer needs tending. This is not a place where conclusions are drawn. It is a place where things are allowed to remain unfinished, unresolved, and perfectly fine as they are. Somewhere within this calm, a final, quiet truth settles, not as a thought but as a sensation, that you are not late, that you are not behind, that for this moment simply being here is enough. History does not measure you. The night does not judge you. They simply accompany you to the edge of rest and then step back, trusting sleep to arrive in its own time. The quiet stretches on, generous and unbroken. There is no signal marking the end of the story because the story has already fulfilled its purpose. It has slowed, softened, and made space. Whatever comes next does not need guidance. If sleep arrives now, it will do so gently, without announcement. And if awareness lingers a little longer, that is fine too. The night is patient. It has always been patient. You are held within it, just as countless others have been held before, wrapped in the same calm that has traveled silently through history, night after night, breath after breath, until nothing remains to be done except rest. The night continues without marking its progress, and in this quiet stretch of time, there is no sense of moving forward or backward, only a deepening ease, as though the world itself has settled into a more comfortable position. What remains of the lantern is no longer an image, but a feeling, a soft internal glow that does not illuminate objects, only reassures, and it rests easily within the calm that surrounds you. At this stage of the journey, history no longer presents itself as places or moments, but as a shared condition, the universal experience of reaching the end of the day and allowing the body to be carried by rest. Across centuries, people arrived here in different ways, some after long travel, some after quiet labor, some after days filled with thought, others after days shaped by routine, yet they all arrived at the same threshold, the moment where effort could finally loosen its hold. The quiet you are in now feels similar to the hush that settled over villages. Once lamps were dimmed and doors were closed. When the last footsteps faded and only familiar sounds remained, the occasional creak of wood, the soft breath of animals settling, the distant murmur of water or wind. These sounds did not demand attention then, and they do not now. They exist as a backdrop of reassurance, reminding the nervous system that nothing unexpected is required. In this softness, the mind begins to do what it does best when left alone. It organizes without effort. It releases without instruction. Thoughts may still appear, but they no longer form lines or arguments. They come as fragments, impressions, feelings without names, and then they drift away, leaving behind a growing sense of space. This space is not empty. It is supportive, like the space within a room that allows you to stretch comfortably, or the space beneath you that holds your weight without comment. The body responds naturally, sinking more fully into whatever supports it, breath slowing in its own rhythm, heart finding a steady, unremarkable pace that does not need to be monitored. History, at this depth, offers no new insights, only companionship. It reminds you quietly that this state has been visited countless times before, that the night has always known how to guide people here without force. In eras without clocks, people trusted this transition implicitly, recognizing the subtle signs, the heaviness in the limbs, the warmth behind the eyes, the way sounds seemed farther away. They did not analyze these sensations. They accepted them, just as you are doing now, perhaps without even realizing it. The gentle return to stillness does not arrive all at once. It unfolds gradually, like a long, unhurried descent into calm water, where each layer brings a deeper sense of ease. The surface concerns of the day are already far above, no longer visible, no longer relevant. What remains is the simple awareness, steady and untroubled, aware without effort. If there is a sense of floating or drifting, it is not something to hold on to. It will continue on its own. The night supports it fully. In this quiet, a final reflection appears, not as a thought to be examined, but as a feeling that settles gently in the chest. That rest is not something borrowed from tomorrow or earned from yesterday. It exists only here, only now, and it has always been available. This reflection does not require agreement or understanding. It can pass through unnoticed and still do its work. The lantern, now entirely integrated into the atmosphere of calm, no longer serves as a guide. Its role has been fulfilled. What remains is the steady presence of night itself, patient, generous, unchanging. The sounds around you, whatever they may be, blend seamlessly into this presence, becoming part of the same soothing pattern. Even silence feels textured now, layered, alive in its own quiet way. The boundary between listening and sleeping grows thinner, almost transparent. Words lose their edges, meanings soften. Awareness spreads gently, no longer focused on any single point. This is not a moment to arrive at. It is simply a moment to pass through, carried by rhythms older than thought. If sleep arrives here, it will do so naturally, without announcement. If it takes a little longer, that too is perfectly fine. The night is in no hurry. History is in no hurry. They remain with you, offering nothing but the permission to let go. And as this part of the journey settles fully, there is nothing left to add, nothing left to explain. The quiet holds on its own, complete and sufficient, carrying you gently toward rest, just as it has carried so many others before, night after night, until waking became a distant concern and stillness was enough. The quiet that has gathered around you now feels complete, as though the night has finished arranging itself and found a shape that requires no further adjustment, and within this shape there is a sense of gentle continuity, a feeling that nothing new needs to begin and nothing old needs to end. If there is still a trace of the lantern somewhere, it exists only as a memory of warmth, a familiarity that does not draw attention to itself the way you might remember a comforting presence without needing to see it. At this depth of calm, even history loosens its form, no longer a sequence of moments, but a slow, steady current that has always carried people toward rest. Across centuries, nights ended like this more often than not with resolution or certainty, but with quiet acceptance, with bodies settling and minds releasing their grip on the day. Villages once dimmed their last lights and trusted the dark to hold them. Travelers lay beneath open skies and let unfamiliar sounds become part of a temporary home. Scholars closed their books, knowing the words would still be there tomorrow. And farmers listened to the land grow still, confident that morning would return in its own time. These moments were rarely recorded, yet they formed the foundation of human endurance. The night you are in now feels connected to those countless other nights, not through detail, but through sensation. The same easing of muscles, the same softening of attention, the same quiet agreement between body and dark that it is safe to let go. Sounds, if they appear, do so gently, without edges. A distant hum, a faint movement of air, perhaps nothing at all. Silence itself feels layered, rich, supportive, as though it has weight without pressure. The body responds by sinking more fully into stillness, each breath unremarkable and steady, no longer something to notice, simply something that happens. Thoughts may still pass through awareness, but they are thin now, almost transparent, like reflections on water that disappear as soon as they form. There is no need to follow them. They know how to leave on their own. In this space, reflection becomes unnecessary. Yet a quiet knowing remains, a sense that you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what is required, which is nothing at all. History offers no final lesson here, only companionship. A reminder that rest has always been a shared human practice, something people return to night after night, trusting it even when days were uncertain. The night does not ask for productivity or insight. It offers permission instead, permission to pause completely. Permission to exist without effort, permission to drift. The boundary between story and silence has now grown so thin that it hardly matters which side you are on. Words no longer arrive as information, but as a gentle texture that blends into the background of awareness. Meaning softens, structure dissolves. What remains is a wide, calm presence, untroubled and patient. If sleep arrives here, it will do so quietly, without signal or announcement, simply slipping in as naturally as breath slips out. And if awareness lingers just a little longer, that is fine too. The night does not rush its own rhythms. It holds space without expectation. As this final part of the journey settles, There is nothing left to add, nothing left to guide. The story has already done what it came to do. It has slowed the mind, softened the body, and reminded you, gently and without demand, that you are not alone in this quiet. Here, no one rests alone. Every story is a soft lantern in the dark, and even as the lantern fades, its warmth remains. If tonight's journey brought you a sense of calm, you may leave a gentle comment for yourself when you are ready. If a memory surfaced, you are welcome to share it. And if you wish to return to this quiet again, remember to subscribe to Tedious History for Sleep, where peaceful stories wait patiently, night after night. For now, there is nothing more to do. The night is wide, the quiet is kind, and rest, in whatever form it takes, is already finding its way to you.